Well, good evening. Oh no, it's good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning, everybody on Zoom. Well, it's Halloween today in Australia, so it felt like a good time to talk about the hungry ghost realms in the Buddhist cosmology. And there's often a ceremony that's done around this time of year, so I'll talk a little about the 6 realms and how we can relate to them in our practice. So the 6 realms are the God realm, the demigod realm, the human realm, the animal realm, the hungry ghost realm, and the hell realms. And I'll describe them a little bit. And they can be seen as literal realms that we are reborn into based on our karmic life, different lives we've lived. We may be reborn into one of these different realms. And obviously all of us here right now are reborn into the human realm. They can be sort of allegories for types of lives that people live. You can live a life that's like a hungry ghost life or a demigod life, and I'll describe that a little bit. And it could also be a metaphor for how we live parts of our lives. Some of our lives may feel very godly in a certain kind of way, and other times they may feel more sort of driven by basic needs, sort of more like an animal realm. And even within a single day, we could break our days up and mark different moments of thinking or activity as being like one of these realms. So there's lots of ways to look at these realms. So the God realm is not like sort of being with the Buddhas in the Buddha heavens. The God realm is a realm where everything is very easy and generally very pleasant, and there's no difficulty. And the difficulty with that is that when we don't have difficulty, we're a bit more prone to lack compassion, and we're a little more prone to be unmotivated. So the God realm is a realm where everything is sort of too easy. It's just easy, and there's very little drive to do anything much. And in all of these realms, it's said that there is a Buddha expounding the Dharma in all the realms, so that the teachings of compassion and of interdependence and of the lack of individual self is being expounded by the Buddhas in each of these realms. But in the God realm, they've got no motivation to listen. So that's the God realm. And then the demigod realm is a little similar, but not quite so easeful. And demigods have a lot of power, and they lack sort of, they're amoral. It's not that they're immoral, but they don't have any real moral compass. Again, they don't care very much about anybody else. They enjoy using their power, they get pleasure from that, and they don't encounter very much difficulty. And then there's the human realm, which we are familiar with, where there is lots of beautiful things and there is lots of terrible things and everything in between. Aggravating things, mildly pleasant things, but they don't last. The whole range of experiences that we have in the human realm. But what's extremely beneficial about the human realm is that we are capable of hearing the Dharma in the human realm. We have motivation because of suffering. There is motivation in that human realm to understand the nature of suffering. to understand why do people do terrible things. Why do I feel restless? Why do I not get what I want? Why do good things happen to people who don't seem to deserve it? Why do bad things happen to people who are wonderful and kind? So the human realm gives us the opportunity to be curious and want to understand why we have this sort of two sides of where we have suffering and joy. Why is that so? And there's Buddhas there to tell us. Buddhas there for us to listen to. So it's a great place to be, the human realm, even though it's a hard realm. And then the animal realm, which in some ways is maybe a little harder for us to talk about these days because our attitudes to animals have changed a lot in a certain kind of way. But the animal realm is marked by being mainly driven by basic needs for food and shelter, procreation, and not to die. Very basic drives. That's how the animal realm is described. And because of the effort involved in caring for those basic needs, there is also not a lot of opportunity to listen to the Dharma, and not a lot of opportunity to build positive karma, because one's driven by just the basic needs of one's family unit, for example. And then the hungry ghost realm is characterized by beings who are insatiably hungry, and they're described as having huge distended bellies, tiny pinhole mouths, emaciated limbs, a long thin neck, and no matter how much they try to put in their mouths, it can never feed and fill that belly. So it's sort of characterized by feelings of longing and greed. And whatever food they put in, it turns into poison. And whatever drink they put in turns into fire. So always hungry, always thirsty. And then the hell realm is like an amplification of the hungry ghost realm. They have all of that, and then on top of that they have also physical pain. So a lot of pain and suffering. So this is sort of old Buddhist cosmology. And maybe we don't talk about these kinds of realms so much in modern day Zen practice, but there is something useful, I think, to consider these realms and look at them and see how they can inform our practice. And if we see them as real, actual realms that when we die we may be reborn into, we can let that be a motivation to try and live, wholesome, beneficial lives. I mean, we'll want to do that because it's just a good idea to do it, whether we get born into a different realm or not, but it can still function as a motivation for us. And I think it's nice to think about this human realm as being the place to be, because we are in this human realm, and if we can see that actually it's the preferred place to be, because if you sort of think of those 6 realms, the upper realms seem too easy and pleasant, and the lower realms too difficult, and we're right there. It's like we're in this perfect spot of difficulty and abundance. It's a perfect place of difficulty and abundance that we can use. And you may have heard the story of how rare it is to be born into the human realm. I remember when I first heard this story, it really, or not story, description, it really motivated me to appreciate that I'm alive. And so the story is that to be born in the human realm is as rare as if you imagine a turtle swimming through the oceans of the world. You can hear a person going somewhere, going off to do good deeds. If you of a turtle swimming through the oceans of the world, and floating on the surface of the ocean is a wooden yoke. A wooden yoke is something that farmers would use in the olden days. The animal's head would go through the wooden yoke, and sometimes people also used it as a way to pull things. So it's wood with a hole in the centre, a wooden yoke, as if there's a wooden yoke floating randomly across the oceans of the world, and the turtle is swimming the whole oceans of the world. And once every 1,000 years it comes up for a breath of air, to take in a breath. And when it comes up, if it happens to put its head through the hole in that yoke, that is more likely to happen than it is for us to be born in the human realm. There's lots of descriptions like that in Buddhist stories of describing vast amounts of time. Like being born in the human realm is equivalent to, or hearing the teachings of the Buddha is equivalent to a bird flying past a mountain and brushing its wing across the tip of the mountain, and doing that enough times over the course of its life that the mountain is worn down to the ground. The amount of time it would take a bird's wing to brush against the mountain and wear it down is the amount of time that the chances, like that amount of time. If you get to hear the Dharma, that amount of time may have passed before you got that chance to hear the Dharma. So there's lots of descriptions like this. So there's something about this human realm that we should really, really appreciate. So if we were to look at these 6 realms as literal, as allegory, and as metaphor, maybe we could just look at them a little more closely in that way. So if we take the God realm, if we think about how might that look in terms of the types of lives people live, you could say that some wealthy countries function sometimes in part a little bit like they're in the God realm, where they don't care enough about other countries. For example, what we're doing right now with not making the formula for the COVID vaccine available, for not making that free and available so everyone in the world could benefit from it. The fact that formula is being kept in the hands of wealthy countries is a little bit, and wealthy companies, is a little bit like they're being like in a God realm, or a semi-God realm, a demigod realm. They're not being compassionate because of their comfort, because of their power, because they have the capacity to not do that. And they're not being motivated. And I think all of us, to some extent, in wealthier countries and those of us of privilege, it's hard for us to keep ourselves fully compassionate to all of the suffering of the world. We tend to kind of do it to a certain extent, and then we kind of don't do it a lot of the time, you know. And we need to be compassionate towards that. So that God realm part of us, we shouldn't hate that God realm part or just feel very negative towards it. We should just be aware of it and compassionate towards it. That we're in this situation where we're partly in a God realm, we're partly in a demigod realm, and that means that we're not always as compassionate and as kind as we could be. And just by being compassionate towards that aspect of ourselves, that aspect of ourselves is actually more likely to shift a little bit. It's more likely to shift than if we are feeling just sort of very guilty, for example. And if we think about the God realm and the demigod realm in relation to, say, our life, just our particular lifespan, there's times in our life that have gone more smoothly, there's times in our life that have been more challenging. And we can look at what were the benefits of the easy parts, what were the benefits of the harder parts, what were the downsides of it being too easy. There often are downsides to things being too easy. And there's often benefits to things being hard, as I mentioned earlier. And we can look at these realms too, the God realm and the demigod realm, just in the course of a day. Maybe times when we're just being a little too complacent. Maybe even slightly slothful. It's okay to be a bit slothful, but we can just notice that we're being that way. We just have to notice it. And then I think our natural impulse is to say, that's enough. That's enough of being slothful. And so we think of the human realm in terms of our lifespan. Of course, there's many ways we can look at the challenges across the course of our life. We can look at the challenges across the course of a day. We can even look at the challenges just how our mind is turning over in the period of time of getting in our car from one place and going to another place. How many realms did my mind pass through in the course of that day? But maybe I'll focus a little more on the hungry ghost realm because it's Halloween. So, the hungry ghost realm, if we think of it very broadly in terms of, say, countries or companies or governments, we can see that some aspects of culture, some aspects of companies, some aspects of government can be dominated by greed, dominated by wanting more power, wanting more money, wanting more status. We can see the harm that does. On that big scale, we can see the harm that does. When you look at war really, even though people talk about war as being sometimes about sort of liberating women from oppression or something or other, almost always, I would say always, when you look behind it, it is actually around resources. It's actually, in the end, it's around greed. It's around wanting resources in whatever capacity. So hungry ghosts are around us all the time on that big scale, and we're immersed within it. You could even look at the whole of the difficulty, the situation we are now in with climate change as a manifestation of the hungry ghosts manifesting across the whole system, the whole systems of how we function as communities. And it's really no individual person's fault. There's no need for us to really blame ourselves individually or even to blame any individual people in positions of power, because all of them are within the system of this sort of hungry ghost realm. They're all in it and don't know. We're all in it and don't know we're in it most of the time. We don't understand. So very important, I think, to not have ill will towards people who are functioning as hungry ghosts. It's very important not to have ill will toward them. They aren't able to hear the Dharma, because even though there's Buddhas in the hungry ghost realms, people in those realms are too busy trying to put food into their tiny mouths. That's what they're doing. They're just trying to put food that turns into poison in their tiny mouths, and they can't hear the Dharma. So very important that we have no malice or ill will towards people functioning as hungry ghosts, no matter how egregious their actions are. Very important. And within our own lives, we could see the hungry ghost aspects of ourself. Sometimes it can be, it can appear to be very wholesome. For example, really wanting to save the world, wanting to save the world from destruction. Not the world will be okay, but wanting to stop species going extinct. We still need to do that with a little piece of non-grasping. If there's too much grasping, we're being a hungry ghost and it will tire us out. So we go forth and we do the good deeds that we do, and we do it with non-attachment to outcomes. If we can do it with non-attachment to outcomes, we'll have more energy to do more good. And so then the hell realm is just an amplification, including more physical pain. So you could see that on a larger level when a community, for example, is so impoverished because their land has been exploited and they're impoverished and they're just struggling to just survive. And in that struggling to just survive, they're not able to have the kinds of dignity that all beings should have, which is to have times just to relax, to have time to enjoy the basic pleasures of the world. So some people, their circumstances, not their fault, have put them in a position where they're kind of in a hell realm. So I wanted to describe a little bit about the ceremony that is often done in Zen temples around this time of year, around the time of Halloween. It's called the Hungry Ghost Ceremony, and it's one of the few ceremonies that's very kind of loud. It's a very loud ceremony. So first of all, you have the altar piled high with fruit and rice, and you have sweet tea offerings, and you have fragrant tea offerings, and incense. So you're offering all of these things to the hungry ghosts. So we're in this ceremony, we invite the hungry ghosts in, and we feed them. And when you feed hungry ghosts by giving freely with no expectation of any sort, when you completely freely give, I am giving you food and water, I'm just wholeheartedly giving it to you freely, then that food and water doesn't turn into poison and doesn't turn into fire, and it briefly gives hungry ghosts some respite. And when hungry ghosts get some respite, they're more likely to be able to hear the Dharma. They're more likely to be able to just pause and just have a little period of like, my burning throat is soothed, my belly doesn't hurt quite so much. I wonder what that Buddha's saying over there. And they might listen for a few minutes, and that will help them come out of the hell realm. So clearly we can see how we can just sort of like template that on any circumstance in our life. We have a neighbour who complains all the time. Your hedge is too high, your car's on my lawn, whatever they complain about. If we can wholeheartedly be kind to them without any expectation that it's going to have any positive effect at all, but just do it anyway, so completely give freely, it may, and it may not, but it may just create a moment in that person where they just slow down a little bit. But for us to be able to give freely like that, we have to practice giving freely, not just at Hungry Ghost ceremonies, and not just when it's easy to do it, but when it's a little harder to do it, we have to practice doing that. And then it will happen when it's really needed, we'll be able to do it. Without even trying, we'll just do it. So at this ceremony, we make all those offerings, and then and we're going to hopefully get to do this here in Canberra when we just have enough people who can turn up to the Zendo and learn it. Maybe by next Halloween we can do it. You have 4 people on either side who each have instruments that they're sort of percussion instruments, drums and cymbals, and they slowly build up a loud sound till it gets louder and louder and louder and faster and faster and faster. And then everybody in the Zendo also has got some kind of homemade noise-making object, anything that they like. And often people will go and get the sorts of things you get at party shops. Like those little, I don't know what they're called, they're like a little drum thing, and when you tip them, they make a silly sound like meh, just some sort of sound that's really discordant and funny sound. And clackers and those party whistle things that you blow, they go woo, things like that. Everybody in the Zendo has those. And as the people with the percussion instruments reach their crescendo, everybody in the Zendo makes loud, 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 loud sounds. And that's to kind of like call in all the hungry ghosts from every sort of corner of the world, every place that they are. Come here and receive our food and drink that we are giving you. We're freely giving it to you. You don't have to do anything, just we're giving it to you. So that's the ceremony, and we repeat that sort of rising crescendo. I think it's 3 times. So it'd be lovely if we can get to do that here sometime in the future. So the whole thing with all of this really is to meet everybody with compassion, whether they're in a God realm, the demigod realm, the human realm, animal realm, hungry ghost realm or hell realm. Meet them with compassion. And I had this poem I wanted to read just to express how beautiful the human realm is that we happen to be in. This is from a 12th century Japanese poet monk, Saigyo, and he wrote this poem. I'll read it twice so that we can let it seep in. This leaky, tumble-down grass hut leaves openings for the moon. Now I gaze at it. All the while it was reflected in the teardrops fallen on my sleeve. So the first part, this leaky, tumble-down grass hut leaves openings for the moon. We can think of this leaky, tumble-down grass hut, it's like as our bodies. We have this body, it gets bruises, it gets cuts, it gets illnesses, it grows old. And because of that, it leaves openings for us to see the moon. It leaves openings for us to see the beauty of life. If we had these God bodies that just were always comfortable all the time, we'd just sit there and do nothing. There'd be no motivation. So we have this leaky, tumble-down grass hut body so we can see the moon. And we gaze at it. And then he makes this beautiful turn, gazing at the moon, how beautiful that is. But all the while, it was reflected in the teardrops fallen on my sleeve. So that moon was always there in the pain of my life, in the difficulties and the challenges of my life, in the tears that fell from my eyes and landed on my sleeve. The moon was reflected in those drops. So here he's reminding us to love the hardship, to love the hardships of our lives. So I think I will stop there. I did want to say just before I forget that if anyone has suggestions for topics for talks, I'd really like to hear that, because I'm going to be giving talks every week. We will have guest speakers every so often. But if you have anything that you would like me to speak on, just send an email to me or send it to Alex, or you could even say so in the discussion afterwards. We'll just finish now with our closing chant, and then we can do questions and comments. And also I'll say now, before I forget too, that if you don't want if you ask a question or a comment and you don't want that included in the video at the end, just let Alex or I know and we can edit that out. But otherwise it'll go up onto the website. So we'll just finish with our closing prayer. Beings are numbers, I vow to save them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. Buddha's way is unsurpassable. I vow to become it. Okay, anything from in the Zendo or on Zoom you'd like to ask or say? Pam.
Thank you, Neti, for that teaching on the hungry ghosts. That was very interesting. I've spoken to you before about this, and so that was very enlightening to me. And I really like the way that you put it in terms of literal realms, allegories, and metaphor for how we live parts of our lives. So now that makes some sense to me. So thanks very much for that.
You're very welcome. Valerie?
I have a question about the hungry ghosts, a more literal sense. I have had experiences in meditation where I've sort of felt very strong, I don't know, presence, or had like an image in my mind of a specific demon or ghost that had a very specific desire, or sort of nature, like ones that were characterized by anger or grief or pain, and I was wondering if you had any advice on sort of working with those very strong presences as they arise. I've tried various different things, but kind of always trying to tweak how I respond to that, because it's always quite an intense experience, and I think understanding it in the context of hungry ghosts and demons from the hell realm has been helpful in like relating to those experiences.
Okay. So were you able to hear Mavami then? Great. Oh, that's good. I think we should always meet any of these things with curiosity and compassion. Just curiosity and compassion. You just can't go wrong. So, you know, if there's a sense of feelings of anger or greed or being judgmental arising, and even if it feels like it's manifesting as a kind of a demon coming to you, it would be good to go like, hello there, gosh, you come and visit me quite often. I wonder what you're wanting. I wonder what you're wanting, you know. What is this about you that you visit me so often, you know? We really need to be genuinely curious. We can't be like pretend curious, like, what are you doing here? Like, why are you here? That's not genuinely curious. That's just kind of putting out it's almost like a rhetorical question. It's not really, you're not really asking. We have to slow down and go, why do you visit me so often? Why do you come to me and say you're not good enough, for example? And really ask that question. What are you trying to, like, these voices come to us, they are serving a purpose. They're not random. None of these voices come to us for no reason. There's no such thing as actual random. There's no real random. Everything, we can't track how how or why things happen, but everything is happening not for a moral reason. It's very important to distinguish, just because of the laws of cause and effect. There's no moral reason why necessarily things happen, but they do happen because of all the prior conditions. So when a voice comes to us repeatedly, particularly, there's a history to that voice, and it's trying to say something, and we should listen. Not necessarily agree with it, but listen to it. In psychology, there's a way of describing, it's called internal family systems, where any voices that we have that come to us are trying to protect us and care for us. They're not doing it very well. It's not skillful what they're doing, but they are trying to help us. Like the voice that's panicky that says, "Oh my God, get out of here quickly, just leave as soon as you can." Something like that. That voice is trying to protect you, but maybe that isn't what you need. Maybe you don't need to hurry up and get out of there. Maybe you need to breathe, slow down and say, "Thank you, I know you're trying to help, but I've got this right now. Back you go. Just let me be calm. I can handle this social situation I'm in," for example. So read it with curiosity and loving kindness and compassion. I'm laughing because so many times people ask questions similar to that to my teacher's teacher, Tenshin Roshi, Reb Anderson, and he always says, "Meet it with compassion. Meet it with compassion." I've sat in front of him and asked him, "But Tenshin Roshi, in this situation, what do you think I should do? I'm worried about the harm this person is doing to this person, in my experience of them." Meet it with compassion. So I hope that helps a little.
Yes, thank you.
There seems to be something in the chat. Can you read what that says?
I missed the name of that in psychology.
Internal family systems. IFS.
Family.
Yeah, family, internal family systems. It's this idea that we actually carry a voice of familial members in our head. And not just familial members, but we carry voices in our heads of how we responded to family members in the course of our life. And some of those voices are helpful, and some of them are historic and no longer, they're kind of archaic. We don't need them anymore. It was a voice we carried that was useful when we were 5 or 6 or 7 or 10 or a teenager. But now we're grown-ups. Now we're grown-ups. We don't need that voice. But we have to be kind and gentle to that voice. So those voices are another way that you could map that onto these 6 realms. Voices, different aspects. You could even find a way to fit those voices into those realms. Like anxiety and panic would fit into, say, the animal realm. A sudden impulsive, I must get out of here, or I have to fill the silence right now. Or I feel unsafe, when actually maybe it's not that unsafe. Maybe it just feels unsafe. That's us momentarily falling into an animal realm, you could say. I do find it slightly difficult talking about animal realms because I actually feel like nowadays we have the line between human and animal is blurred a lot more as we understand that animals actually share so many more characteristics than we realised before with us. But I do think it's fair to say there's something distinct about humans. We just have to look at the impact we've had on the earth, that there's something about us that does place us not apart completely, but there is something different about us. Our impacts are different. Our capacity to do good and to do harm seem to be greater. So we are so lucky to have the Dharma to help steer us towards doing things for the good, not for harm, because we have such capacity. Well, I think we might need to finish, but if there's one short comment or question, yes, Joe.
I just wanted to thank you for that talk. It was very interesting, and it's nice to sort of carry around with me with Halloween and all the plastic that's sort of appeared in my community and sort of synthetic stuff, which I think is kind, that's here, and balance that with the kids like it and it's fun, but like the horror of seeing the additional stuff, and I'm thinking carefully about the companies that produce it, and how we're all trying to find a way. So I really appreciate the talk. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for caring and noticing about these things. I think more and more people are doing that now. It's good, slowly but surely, but hopefully not too slowly. All right. Thank you, everyone.